In the heart of the 20th century, amidst the civil rights struggles and the fight for racial justice in America, there emerged a voice that would resonate far beyond his time, a voice that would challenge the very foundations of society. This is the story of Amos Wilson, a psychologist, scholar, and revolutionary thinker whose ideas continue to inspire and provoke critical thought today. Amos N. Wilson was born on February 23, 1941, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, during a time of deep racial segregation in the United States. Growing up in the Jim Crow South, Wilson witnessed firsthand the brutal realities of racial inequality. These early experiences would shape his understanding of the systemic forces that oppressed African Americans. Wilson's early life was marked by a determination to seek education as a path to empowerment. He left Mississippi to pursue higher education, eventually earning a degree in psychology. His journey took him to institutions like Morehouse College, New York's Fordham University, and ultimately to a PhD in psychology from Fordham. But Wilson was not content with academic achievement alone. He sought to use his knowledge to challenge the status quo and uplift his community. Amos Wilson's work focused on the psychological impact of oppression on African Americans. He believed that the social and economic disparities experienced by Black communities were not just the result of historical circumstances, but were perpetuated by a systematic devaluation of Black life. His seminal work, The Falsification of African Consciousness, argues that the miseducation and disempowerment of African people were deliberate acts of psychological warfare. Wilson's writings were not just academic critiques, they were calls to action. He argued that understanding the psychology of oppression was essential to liberating African people. In Blueprint for Black Power, he laid out a comprehensive plan for the economic and political empowerment of the Black community, emphasizing the need for self-reliance and collective action. Wilson's ideas have profoundly influenced contemporary Black thought and activism. His work is often cited in discussions about racial identity, economic empowerment, and the importance of cultural consciousness. Even after his untimely death in 1995, Wilson's legacy lives on through the many who continue to draw from his teachings in the fight for justice.
You've been around a lot of brilliant brothers, right? Including yourself.
I've been very, very, very blessed. I knew everybody.
Is he up there in regards to one of the most brilliant people you ever met?
Who, Amos?
Yeah.
Amos was a god. Yeah. Blueprint for Black Power, which is his last piece, which was finished after his death. But I like developmental psychology of the Black child. Everything Amos Wilson ever wrote was to dissect America's psychological influence on Black people. And no one comes really close to him except maybe Wade Nobles and Naim Akbar. But I put Amos above both of them in terms of analyzing the psychological influence, the psychological damaging, the psychological abuse of Black people by the system, and the deliberacy of them, the structured, organized manner in which that psychology was used.
All right, so I saw you reading the Amos Wilson book earlier, right? What is it about his teachings that really resonates with you?
Sheesh. That's a heavy hitter, man. Baba Amos Wilson, Dr. Amos Wilson, for me, in these last 2 to 3 years is my premier scholar, I would say. Really woke me up and really guided me on that path to understand what it truly meant to study African history. He has a famous quote dealing with true nationalism. And he says true nationalism, takes his tradition, this African tradition, and puts it into context. That true nationalism doesn't take tradition just for tradition's sake and say, oh, well, just because this happened back then, I'm gonna do this. But more so takes his history into context to see how it can be productive to him in his economical, socio-political, and his family structure as it refers to the 21st century. So Amos Wilson, I think, is, for me, the guy that I go to, whether I'm traveling or, I'm just sitting down, chilling, whether it's Blueprint to Black Power, African Consciousness versus New World Order, Falsification of African Consciousness, Black Genius. He has a bunch of titles that I really cling to. That is phenomenal works on what it really means to not only study African history, but to understand your context in which you're in, and not just take something from just, And I believe he's one of those guys that said, hey, I know we want to be, Pan-Africanist, and I know we want to, do this and do that for our people, but it's contradictory if we, scream African, African consciousness, Black Power, right hand, by the way, and we go outside and then everything else is owned by another people.
Amos Wilson's legacy is not just in his written words, but in the actions they have inspired. His vision of a self-empowered Black community continues to guide efforts to build economic independence and cultural pride. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, Wilson's work serves as a reminder that true liberation begins with the mind. In a world still grappling with issues of racial injustice, Amos Wilson's ideas offer a roadmap to a future where African people are no longer at the mercy of systems designed to oppress them. His life was a testament to the power of knowledge and the importance of using that knowledge to fight for a better world. The life of Amos Wilson was one of dedication to truth, justice, and the upliftment of his people. Though he is no longer with us, his spirit endures in every act of resistance, every effort to educate, and every dream of freedom. As Wilson himself said, a people's fate is determined ultimately by what goes on in their minds. This is the life and legacy of Amos Wilson. His work remains a guiding light for those struggling for liberation and empowerment